So this is part two, where I will be living a little bit on the topic of free will. Obviously, it is a big topic. Just for people dropping into this session, free will. I'm talking about things that matter. For example, when you're talking about making decisions, can somebody who steals a loaf of bread be said to be making a good, bad decision? Well, that depends on which point of view you take. And again, believe it or not, that's a calculational thing. It's how we compute reality and how we make sense of things. And that we decide whether something is on the right end or on the wrong end of a particular spectrum. And that's where it becomes really important to understand and value free will accordingly. Because if we are saying that free will is this capacity to take a step back and look at the situation and then decide on what you're going to calculate. Again, not the how you're going to calculate, because that's a byproduct of your upbringing. That is a product of what you are, how you are made, your biology, your genetics, your very core even. And there's no point getting into the nurture versus nature debate, because ultimately you have the problem that you'll have to draw the line somewhere. And this nurture nature debate is a spiral, and it's a widening spiral where it becomes harder and harder to actually distinguish what qualifies as nature, because people develop second and third natures about things. So it gets interesting when you start to think about how our ability to make decisions is so important in our concepts of our sense of well-being, our sense of identity, our sense of well-being. Sorry, I've always said that, of self. And there is a critical quality there that can't be underestimated. And you do end up very quickly realizing that when you are basically equating free will to the ability to consider information correctly, there's a lot of analogies there into things like wisdom, where that you would say that if that's true, then you could almost say that wisdom is the having of a lot of free will, the ability to take the perspective that is the most positive under the circumstances. Now, and there are a lot of things to consider when you think about the dot theory, because of course, yes, it's a physics theory, it's a mathematics theory, it's a computational theory. All of those things are true, but what were you expecting? It's a grand unification theory, so it shouldn't really be surprising, because if it is a grand unification theory, you could argue that it should link all of those functionalities together, because it unifies all these different ways in which that the human species expresses itself. And interestingly, there's a lot of artistic outputs associated to dot theory work as well, and I'm sure we'll get around to that. But that's as always with things artistic, it does seem to be the byproduct of a sense of luxury, rather than a sense driven by need and investment. Hence why this focus on the healthcare element, of course. And I think when I personally reflect on the wider meaning of the dot theory, as this grand unification theory, as this way of understanding the world and the universe. Um, yes, it gets very philosophically very quickly, but it really doesn't need to be, because it's a very practical uh, tool and a way of looking at things. I do discuss it elsewhere in the documents, but it's really about the ability to reflect, i.e., actually see in the information. Then it's about being able to record it, so that there is a either memory based or record based awareness of its sequential development over time, i.e., it occurring. There are patterns to these things, which you can then observe. And that's a chief mantra for me, really. This whole process of reflecting uh, and seeing the data, capturing it, um, and being able to record the data, which humanity has excelled at developing tools to record information, and then this ability to observe and think about and understand, to see them, notice them, the real meaning of observing um, the things that happen around us. So it's I think a strong mantra to reflect, record, and observe uh, ourselves around us. Because immediately, if you do that, if you make that a logical thing to do, an attitude to take, a perspective to assume, then immediately you automatically make better decisions. No person can ever really decide to look at the available information consciously and not make a better decision for it. It's a contradiction in terms. You have to psychologically and motivationally, you have to deny yourself certain types of information in order to justify making bad decisions. In reality, we can look at it like that. So this powerful concept of free will, um, to me, it has a lot of significance to it. And of course, when you write down a theory that essentially discusses the logic of free will, it gets strange at times. But what I came to understand is that strangeness is really not justifiable, because as I discuss on some of the topics around evolution, what we're doing here is creating an inherent observer bias. We're saying that which wins works, right? But in reality, what we're missing out here is the fact that it is what we see win works. And that is where our narrative, our observation and understanding of evolution is deeply, deeply flawed, because we are only seeing it as we human observers can perceive it. An elephant does not see an elephant the way that we see an elephant, and so on. And that is just a complete an inherent fallacy to this kind of humanocentric way of looking at the world and the universe, but an understandable one, of course, because that's essentially the perspective we come to assume and are bred to look at the world from. So it's a very natural default setting, shall we say? And in a sense, you can say that good health and good education enhance free will, define free will. The better both are, the greater the level of free will one will act from. There's a balance, however, to be reached, which is that free will is to will something. So there needs to be a skill to will. The skill, that's where it becomes problematic, and that's where I think it becomes relevant in a lot of kind of psychodynamic and trauma work. The skill is often acquired in a way that is less than pleasant. And you only need to think about school and the kind of stereotypical experience that people will reflect on as a school experience, which usually is probably not as traumatic as the average narrative would have it, which probably means that we're exaggerating. But it does mean that we have a very, very significant need to seriously control and improve access to healthcare and education in order to indeed improve this whole notion of free will. It has a lot of implications to understand free will and how to manage free will better. And I think that where I would personally like to go in the future of the dot theory, because ultimately a theory, once it's written, and once people understand it, and hopefully explainer videos like this will help a little bit with that. Then you're done and dusted with it, right? Once people understand how the knife works, it does its job from then on. But my personal interest in the wider context of the discussion around free will is simply that there is a quality of life improvement quality to it. And I think that if we properly investigate our individual relationship with free will, it can only benefit us all and individually. And just to clarify, the reason why I wax so lyrically about free will is because free will is a perfectly rational notion. Like I said, it's a byproduct of progress or evolution. It's a post hoc evaluation of what works for us. And because we're evaluating us as if we are the same as we were, we think that that's the right thing to do. And of course, because we are a physical reality, there is a lot of truth to that. And in a lot of situations, that's the case. And by improving this whole understanding of our notion of free will, I think that there is a lot more discussion that can be had too, because it's very much about understanding our own relationship with our challenges, our skills, our access, shortage and available. Because sometimes you can have the not luxury, what's called the downside of affluence, where you are given too many solutions and actually end up not making the one that is neither sensible nor rational. So there is a lot wrapped up in all of this. It will keep on coming up throughout many of the videos coming up. It's simply because it's the other very interesting side to the dot theory, understanding how to do free will better. It's part of my personal mission to impact positively on education and health. But it just makes for a very interesting philosophical debate as well. And that's where I really want to close in these last couple of minutes, because the value of understanding the logic of free will is that we can put to bed certain aspects of philosophy, in a sense, and we can look at philosophy and integrate it into the logics of science, and recognize philosophy for what it is, and that is the science of how we think and perceive. And that's incredibly important, and that's also the other layer, if you like, of how we perceive reality. Because we, as human individuals, we see reality as we see it, other people's bodies and the entities that engage with us on a daily basis. And then we see it as we give it meaning to have. And so these two different layers of information, they have slightly different qualities. And we often tend to treat them as one and the same. But the reality is that whilst a knife is sharp, it isn't deadly. Not as I'm holding it in my hand, wanting to slice the bread. So there is this layer of meaning that is being added within the human mind and within the psychology, that both elevates us from, let's say, the average mammal. We have certain cerebral capabilities that really make us an outstanding land animal. But we might have some competition when it comes to levels of consciousness. I believe that there are some whales that really stand as strong candidates to say that they might have a much greater level of consciousness than humans do. So it's all relative. As I said earlier, it's all very, very relative, and the problem is that we want things to be clear, and the clarity really only comes once you really understand that it's all relative, because it depends on how you see it and how you understand it. And in a sense, that's where some of these videos will end up getting into the realm of philosophy, but rightly so, because it's just about making us think. So on that note, I'm going to thank you for your attention and my 15 minutes of fame, and have a wonderful evening, night, day, daytime, morning, whenever it is that you're seeing this. All the best. Bye-bye. Peace out.